that's what casual birding teaches, right? If you're looking at birds and you're looking at the birds casually and you're just experiencing them, you're seeing all of the other facets of life that they're tied to. So you're seeing the worms, you're seeing the insects, you're seeing the flowers, you're seeing some of them might eat leaves.
This week I meet with Faraaz Abdool, wildlife photographer and author of Casual Birding in Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. In my show, I'll tell you about the wild birds I've seen, speak with other enthusiasts, take bird walks, and share stories from listeners around the world. In case you missed it, last episode I shared a solo bird walk that I took one afternoon at Malibu Lagoon State Beach in California back in 2018. Do take a listen. This episode is brought to you by Casual Birder Weekly, the show's newsletter. Each week, I share exclusive updates and videos about the birds I've seen, tips to help you get the best birding experiences, recommendations for other podcasts or books I've enjoyed, and I let you know about any planned group birdwatch events. Sign up now. The link is in the episode notes. Faraaz Abdool is the author of Casual Birding in Trinidad and Tobago, a beautiful guide to the birds of his island home. He's also a noted photographer, tour leader, and active member of the global birding community. I've been following Faraaz on Instagram for some time, enjoying both his gorgeous photos and his commentary about the natural world. This episode is an edited version of a Facebook Live conversation I had with Faraaz in front of an audience from the show's Facebook group. He tells me how he became a casual birder and shares some of his favourite birding moments.
I'm a lover of nature, first and foremost. And I did not start off as a photographer, nor did I start off as a birder. I started off just really enjoying outside and enjoying the sights and the sounds of some of our remote places here in Trinidad and Tobago. And then I was working at the time and I realized that many people who I would tell of, I show back up to work on Monday and I'm looking very rejuvenated and everyone's all, downtrodden a little bit. And they were like, so how was your weekend? What did you do? And I would tell them, well, I did this and I went here and I went there, whatever. And often people would not believe me, especially if I say that, well, this was so beautiful when I went and there was nobody around. And so I started with a very small point and shoot camera and I started to take photographs of the places that I've been. And eventually I started to photograph some of the birds that are around my house. And I used to check on Wikipedia for the list of birds of Trinidad and Tobago. And I started to identify birds that way, and then I realized, wow, but we have almost 500 species here, and I've seen about 20. And so, it sort of piqued an interest there, and it rekindled an interest that I had from when I was really small. I remembered myself then going outside and looking at the birds, and I'm looking at an owl sitting on our fence post and everything. And all of those things kind of came back to me. And for me, it was very much like a reconnection. And I really wanted to do something that can help the birds as well and to help the nature around me. And I would say I was always good at writing. So it kind of came naturally to me to describe some of these things in words to accompany the pictures. And I started blogging in 2014. Or maybe I think it was 2013, somewhere around there. And it just sort of grew from there, and just sharing my work. And now I can say that yes, I am a writer. I have a book, and I'm now a published photographer and very vocal advocate for the birds and nature around.
Well, I have to say, I've been following your Instagram account for quite some time, and I love the way that you don't just describe the birds or the animals or the flora that you're showing, but you talk about the feelings it evokes, or you talk about the impact that it has on both you and the environment. And it's really a lesson without it being sort of a tutorial.
It's not school.
No, exactly. And you really, whenever I read them, I feel like I've tapped into a world that I haven't quite seen. So your writing is really evocative. So I urge everyone to go and check out your Instagram account, and no pressure that all your next photos have got to have these wonderful, eloquent, because I know they will. But I just feel like I'm raising the bar a bit. But I really, really enjoy reading about it, and the fact that you, as you say, you advocate for the for making the changes in the environment. You raise people's awareness, but in a gentle way, but a strong way. So you're not ramming it down our throats, but at the same time, you're really making people think about what they're seeing and what's happening.
Yeah, as they say, you can't you can take the horse to the water, but you cannot force the horse to drink. So my whole modus operandi, then, even with my book, Casual Birding, is to get the horse thirsty then, right? And if you can make the horse thirsty, then you that's all of the work that you have to do. If I can get people to really and truly fall in love with nature and fall in love with the birds, then I don't have to tell them not to litter. I don't have to as some of the politicians here say, I don't have to beat anyone over the head with a big stick to tell them, you should not be trapping birds, or you should be responsible in your actions, or you should read your labels and check if it has palm oil in your shampoo or whatever. I would not have to micromanage anyone. People should not have to be micromanaged. I think that every experience in nature is a profound experience, and it's up to us to be open to receive it.
Now, you mentioned the title of your book there, Casual Birding in Trinidad and Tobago. And when I first saw the title of your book, I thought I was the only. But I know that there have been other casual birders as well.
Yeah, it's the same feeling I had when I saw your podcast. It's like, I thought I was the only casual one.
But we connected, and it was so lovely because we were coming from the same point. But you hadn't always been a casual birder, had you?
No. It's when I had first started, and I wish that I started from earlier. First of all, because I had always liked birds from when I was very small. I had liked dinosaurs, first of all. And, there was just a natural progression. And I remember drawing birds when I was really small, and drawing their feet especially. And I'm thinking, wow, these look just like the theropod dinosaurs that I had loved. But yeah, when I started back really getting involved in birds, and I linked up with a few people who were birders here. Well, I didn't know that birders existed, but I eventually found a few. In the field, I met them in the field and ended up exchanging phone numbers and so on. And they were very much into, we're going to chase for this bird and look for this one, and that's a rarity and whatever. I remember on one of my very first outings, I saw a flock of maybe, I think it was 27 white-faced whistling ducks, and they are incredibly rare for Trinidad. And that was actually the biggest flock on record ever.
Wow.
And I didn't even share that information because I took a picture of the flock, I remember, and there was just like a stick going across the entire picture. So I was totally ashamed of it, and I never shared it.
Oh.
But then, later on, then realized, oh, this is a very significant sighting. But I eventually got kind of caught up in that. Well, wow, these are all of these birds, and I need to see all of these things, and it's so exhilarating seeing new birds. And while I would still today try to see something new, we had a yellow-throated vireo, which is migratory, in one of our forest patches here recently, and I went to see it, but I didn't really try, other than going. And that's where I got now, as opposed to me maybe like 7 years ago, trudging through the forest at night looking for a mottled owl, just to see it, but maybe it came from a point where I have seen a fair share of birds here, and also the realization that whatever is common here is rare elsewhere, and vice versa. So it's a gradual process, becoming casual at it.
Yes. No, I totally appreciate what you're saying, because I think if I had been around people who were chasing for the next bird, there is a definite competition element, even within yourself, of wanting to get, the list to be higher, to have seen more and more.
Yeah.
But for me, there's something so special about just taking the time to look at that one bird. How is it behaving? What's it doing? And even now, I've been watching birds for a long, long time, but I've recently taken a bird identification course just to learn more about birds. With Krista from the Birding Tools podcast.
Birding Tools, yeah.
Yeah. And while, I know a lot of the things that she's teaching already, but there are aspects to it, or there are enhancements that I hadn't even considered. And just this week, talking of the starlings, I've been having starlings in my garden again because they've got young, and I've bought some mealworms. So it's a whole thing. So now I'm like looking after mealworms to make sure they live long enough to then feed them to the starlings. It's horrible. But anyway, I was able to get some really close pictures of the starlings. And what I hadn't realised before taking the course with Krista was that they, at certain times of year, their plume... Oh, I shouldn't say this because I was about to use it for What Bird Wednesday, and now I can't because I'm talking about it. If you're watching, you can't take part in What Bird Wednesday. But what I hadn't realised was the little arrowhead markings that they have on their body are actually formed from the tips of each feather. So at the tip of each feather, there's a sort of paler edge to the tip. Mm-hmm. And as they layer, it's making these arrowheads. But I just thought they had flecks on their body. I didn't think, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. And now I'm looking sort of in so much extra detail at individual birds and noticing the feather shapes. I'd never really thought about the different groupings of feathers on the wings,
the coverts, primary coverts.
Exactly, yeah. And I just hadn't, I knew they had wing feathers. I knew about primaries and secondaries, but I hadn't really thought about the individual groupings. But all of that is like enhancing my sitting and watching and noticing individual birds. But that's my take on casual birding, and I feel like that's a similar. That's kind of where you had got to as well.
Very, very similar, and just being able to see the birds as individuals and not as species, right? So just yesterday we were sitting in the forest, my wife and I, and we were looking at a collared trogon. So this is a female. So she's like brown overall, and her belly and underbelly and stuff is bright red. I actually have a field guide here, so I can probably show you. I don't know. It's never too far away, right? I'm always.
I thought you were going to just pick up casual birding in Trinidad and Tobago.
I could have, but it's just out of reach. So, and this one is just right on it. So this here. So this is a female, right? And right now is when all of the birds are getting ready to breed. And so we looked at her. She popped up onto a branch, and she's opening her mouth, and she's not really making any vocalization, but she's opening her mouth repeatedly. And I was photographing her, and it's only when I got home and I'm looking at the pictures last night, and I'm realizing that every time she's doing that, she's looking up. And then I thought, oh, well, the male is probably there. We did not know. We had no idea, right? And it may be some kind of interaction between her and the male. And we always think of courtship as a strictly male activity. And the male is trying everything, and the female is just, nonchalant about the whole business, right? And I'm looking at her plumage and everything, and her plumage is so fresh. and it's so well defined, and she has a black mask that you don't always see. And I'm sure like you probably didn't pick that out from just looking at the plate, right? Because it's a very subtle marking, and some of these things are only visible in at a certain stage in their plumage when the feathers are very fresh. We see this sometimes with flycatchers and other birds like that. But it's something that we tend to not notice if we just see a species and we move on to another species. So like, okay, well, I've seen colored trogon, so now I have to go and travel to Panama and look for orange-bellied trogon, and so it goes on. But I love experiencing them.
And that's one of the things that during lockdown, I think a lot of us have kind of had to refocus our attention on what we're seeing, because we may only be able to see the birds in our local areas. And so whereas before you'd go, oh yeah, there's starling, oh yeah, there's a blackbird, oh yeah, there's a house sparrow. Now it's, as you say, it's looking at individuals and it's noticing, oh, that house sparrow, now that one has had this strange marking on her belly I thought it was just going to be until she went through a molt, but it's still there now. So this must be a genetic thing for her, that she's got this particular marking on her body. And it's things like that, right? Recognizing individuals and the female blackbirds, they're brown. But they're actually not just brown. There's mottling on them, and
of course, and the subtleties.
Exactly, and that's what you start to notice when you have a paucity of species to look at. You're like, okay, right, I've only got these ones, but I will look at them more closely. I think there's not only is there a lot of understanding to happen then, because you are noticing more details or understanding more about the behaviour. But it links very much to sort of a mindfulness thing as well, because
that's right.
You're focusing so much on a particular thing that it's very calming. So that there's been a lot of positive experiences to be found in a time that has been not very positive at all.
Exactly that. And you know why it is like that, Suzy? I firmly believe that it is because all of the birds, we're looking at the birds and we're looking at whatever is out in front of us, they're all living in the present. They're not thinking about something that happened in the past. They're not thinking about what will happen tomorrow, right? They're all right here, right now. So it's like that, as you say, mindfulness, and it's an exercise in being present. We live in uncertain times. So it's very important for us to be able to be present.
It only says Facebook user, but we've got a question here. What's the most memorable bird you've spotted?
Okay, so the very first bird that come to mind is secretary bird, and the secretary bird is a bird that I had seen in books for years, since I was a really, really little boy, and we finally got to see not only one but a pair hunting in 2019 when we were in Kenya. So that's something I also do. So I take people birding in East Africa. So that's a shameless bit of self-promotion there.
Useful to know.
So that's the bird that comes to mind immediately.
And was that because it was well, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I saw a secretary bird when I was in Kenya as well, and they look very ancient.
Yes,
and given that you had that love of dinosaurs, I just wondered if it made you think of velociraptors or something like that.
Very much so, because even the way that it hunts, it does not really use its wings. It hunts on foot, so it chases its prey on the ground, and it kicks it to death essentially. And just that complete focus, it's a very, very intense bird to take in, and of course, with us as being casual birders, we like to just not just see the bird, but to experience the bird. So, we spent quite a number of minutes, maybe even up to half an hour, just observing these birds move around and hunt. And it's their intensity and that fierceness and their purpose that they walk around with. Um, I absolutely will never forget that.
That's fascinating. Oh, and that was Mike Drew that asked that question. And I can read in the chat that Diane says her husband would like to casually find an ant pitter in Trinidad.
That is probably the most difficult bird to find in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you. I heard it once, and it was before the sun came up on a forested trail. We were actually going to see oil birds coming back into their cave, because the oil birds are nocturnal. So we were walking through this trail, and it was, I think, in 2012 or 2013. So I had technically just started birding, just only a few years prior. And I heard the call, and it's a very distinctive call of the ant pitter. And I just thought, well, I was familiar with the call because I had a bunch of recordings that I was learning these things. And I said, okay, well, I'll come back and check it out in a few minutes. Let me just see if we can catch the oil birds. Not understanding the immense rarity of that situation. I should have really stayed then and looked for that ant pitter, and I would have been probably one of the very few people in the country to see it.
If you'd like to feed your garden birds and you're not sure what feeders to get, take a look at my new bird feeder report. It tells you about the different types of bird feeders, what food to put in them, and which birds will eat from them. Get the report now at bit.ly/bird feeder report. When you were describing seeing the secretary bird in Kenya, that sounds like my dream type of excursion or trip, because when we went, we were on a sort of classic safari type thing, and everyone was just really interested in seeing the big five mammals. And every time we stopped, it would be like, look at this lion or whatever. And yes, fascinating. But look at these things that are down here. Look at those little birds over there. But I had no time really to look at them because we were off again to see the next. I always said, if I was ever lucky enough to go back, we would do a different type of trip. Certainly the sort of thing that you're describing, where you can take the time to look at the bird species. It's not rushing around just so you've seen a giraffe. And, and I do understand why people want to see those big animals. And it is really amazing to see them in the wild. But there's so much else that you're not seeing while you're just focusing on those big animals.
Yeah, and those animals are the ones that are really, really popularized then in documentaries and all of that. So that is what really drives us as people who are travelers who go to these countries to visit and to see things. So we want to see what we have seen on the television, right? We want to see what we have seen on the documentary. So it's for that reason I believe that we should, in terms of media, so like myself as a photographer and other people who are videographers and cinematographers and so on, we also need to concentrate on the species that are not so popular. And that will in turn then create interest for some people to say, you know what, let's stop for, a pink-breasted lark or something like that, because when we were there, and it's not like we're not serious birders, I'm sitting on the Rare Bird Committee here. We're with our guide, who is a renowned ornithologist in Kenya, National Geographic explorer, and TED speaker and so on. So he's a very, very learned and experienced birder. But we're stopping for everything and anything. We stop for a savanna monitor. We stop for a little bee eater. We stop for hartebeest or whatever. It doesn't matter. But everything is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And we enjoy it. Yeah.
When it comes to conserving nature, people only look at the fluffy, cuddly.
Definitely 100% on the fact that we have to concentrate on all of the individual links. And that's what casual birding teaches, right? You see, if you're looking at birds and you're looking at the birds casually and you're just experiencing them, you're seeing all of the other facets of life that they're tied to. So you're seeing the worms, you're seeing the insects, you're seeing the flowers, you're seeing some of them might eat leaves. And for us here, we had a hummingbird that came and built a nest on our property, and she picked off. We have some epiphytes growing on the fence, and she picked off the flowers. She picked off pieces of lichen, and she put all of those things in a nest. And we realized that, oh, okay, all of these things that some people, many people would just like rip them down because they think that they're parasites, or they're not aesthetically appealing. It's all of these little ingredients that allow for something just as simple as one species of bird to build her nest and to raise her young. So it's all tied together.
It really is, and it's so fascinating to look and learn, and so important to share that, which is what exactly you do in your Instagram posts, but also you've got your book.
Okay, yes. So here's my very first book. It's quite large compared to the field guide. It's a bit bigger, a lot bigger. But a lot of it is indeed pictures and a lot of photography in this, obviously, because I am a photographer. But it's for the reason that many people, when we're looking at field guides, we see the birds as illustrations, and many of the illustrations, they're of the birds, and there is no indication of habitat. Now, for me and my photography style, I like to include a lot of habitat, and it's for the reason that the habitat preservation is just as important, if not more important, than the preservation of the birds themselves. Without the habitat, there is no way that you'll be able to see the birds, right? They need a place to live. So that's one of the things that I have included. The text is also quite large, right? So my wife, Joanne, did all of the design and the layout for all of this. We chose this specific kind of layout, which is a very spacious layout for it to be casual, right? So when you start to read, even though it's such a huge book, it doesn't seem like too much, right? And the font is large, so also make it accessible.
And you've written it in a way that people who may not have scientific backgrounds can learn from.
Of course, because I think that many of the books that are pro environmentalism, then, and many of the movements that are pro environment and pro nature, they tend to be academic in nature. Well, nature, yeah, because we learn about these things in school, and the science is telling us that this is a problem, and the science is telling us that we need to act upon it. So we, as academics, we go and we bring this message to the public, right? But the public does not have our same vested interest in that academic side of it. And very often we tend to use this, a kind of jargon that is not really friendly to everyone. So I cannot have a book and call it casual birding and not use casual language. I really wanted it to be something that's very inviting. I mean, I can go through the chapters generally, because it starts off with why birds? Why, out of all of the creatures on God's green earth, then why birds, right? And then what is birding? Because many people may not be aware of what birding actually is. A little bit of identifying birds, like how to identify birds, what to look for, how to bird. That's chapter 4. I talk a little bit about binoculars and spotting scopes and so on. Chapter 5 is where to bird in Trinidad and Tobago, because birding really takes us to some fabulous places, some really picturesque locations here. And then I have the traditional species accounts, which forms a lion's share of the book, about 500 pages. And after that species account section, I have 2 more chapters on the end, and one is birds in danger, which outlines some of the threats that are facing birds worldwide as well as in our country, and what we can do to help. So things that we can do on an individual basis to help the birds. And the last chapter is, I think I have found an injured bird. So that has information about wildlife rehabilitation centers in the country, and how to know if a bird is injured or if it's just a fledgling, or all that useful information.
You've got information there that could answer any question that a casual birder might have. And it's not limited to casual birders, because obviously people who are experienced will gain a lot from reading that as well.
I'm hoping that anyone who reads it will have at least one moment when they say, oh, really? I didn't know that.
I saw a presentation from you recently where you talked about all the different areas within Trinidad and Tobago and the sort of types of habitat and the types of birds. And I mean, I'd already been sold on coming there from speaking with you previously. But then when I saw those photographs, it was just, as soon as... Are they birds in your garden that are calling out there?
Yes, tanagers, yeah.
Fantastic.
I have a tree right next to my window, and they're always there.
Oh, how wonderful. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk across you. It's just that I was so excited about, listening to the birds, but also thinking about all the different habitats that you've got there. It's not a very big, they're not very big islands, are they?
They're pretty small, but, we've got a lot of different types of habitat here, and that's what makes us really, really unique. So we have mangroves, we have rivers, we have oceans, we have different kinds of forests, we have scrub. We have the wet savanna, which is like a very, very tiny part that's left, and that's a remnant from our prehistory. So that's like from pre-Ice Age, when the entire lowland part of Trinidad used to be this kind of wet savanna. So, you go there and you find things like carnivorous plants and all of these weird and wondrous creatures. So many different habitats that can be crammed into such a small space. That's what gives us the second highest number of species of birds per unit area. Birds can be found anywhere and everywhere. Casual birding does not have to be limited to your home, but you can go to a park, you can go to a lovely location, but it's a mindset, right? So you don't go there looking, you don't go there hunting, right? You don't go there seeking. So like this, yesterday when I was going out, I spoke with someone and he asked me, so what are you going for? And I said, well, nothing. I'm just going. And whatever we see. And I'll just be thankful for that.
It's so wonderful to hear someone else say that, because it took me a long time to feel that it was valid for me to bird in the way that I bird, because I'm very much like that. I love going to a location. I've seen the birds and enjoyed the birds that I've seen in the places that I've been. And, yes, I perhaps could have seen more, but I've still got valuable experiences.
Yeah, and that's a lesson.
One of the people watching said that they enjoy watching orioles, kiskadees and spectacled thrushes in the garden just as much as exploring new habitats. Yeah. Mind you, from my point of view, if I had orioles, kiskadees and spectacled thrushes in my garden, I wouldn't be going anywhere anyway. It goes back to what you were saying earlier, Faraaz, that, what's common for some of us is totally unusual for someone else. I think that's one of the really nice things about hearing what people around the world are seeing just locally to them. And it's like when I was in San Diego a couple of years ago, I did one of my episodes where it was just a bird walk around La Jolla. But it was just partly me sort of wondering, if I lived here and just went on a walk around my neighbourhood, what would I see?
I love to do that, just walk around and see what you see. We were in Suriname for a couple of days, and I ended up going out only one day. I just told these people, I just said, just take me into the bush. You don't have to give me a birding guide or anything. Just take me there, and whatever we see, we'll see. And it was lovely. It was a wonderful experience. Even with the birds that are around here all the time, the orioles and the kiskadees and all of these guys, it's interesting noticing aspects of their lives. What I really enjoy is waking up really early and hearing their different songs in the morning.
Last year, Faraaz sent me a recording of the birds in his garden at dawn. Let's hear it again.
You're listening to the tail end of the dawn chorus here in my backyard in Trinidad. I am Faraaz Abdool. I'm a photographer / writer, but most importantly, very casual birder living in Trinidad and Tobago. The most prominent calls that you'll be hearing are carp grackles. I have 2 palm tanagers that are looking at me and singing, and a pair of green-rounded parrotlets that is right above my head, but they are being pretty quiet right now. Ruddy ground doves in the background, and that call you just heard is a greyish saltator. There's a saltator again. My parrotlets are looking at me. That lovely song is a song of the spectacled thrush. You're also hearing mild chattering of green-rumped parrotlets and that very strong call. That's a greyish saltator. Just had a banana quid come and look at me inquisitively. But yeah, all in all, just my backyard in Trinidad and Tobago.
Find out more about Faraaz on his website, FaraazAbdool.com, and do follow him on Instagram, @Faraaz Abdool. Global Big Day, an initiative by Global Birding, Swarovski Optic, eBird and BirdLife International, will take place on 8th of May 2021. The Casual Birder podcast team will be taking part in the event. It's a great way to have fun birding as part of a virtual team, watching our local birds and finding out what other team members around the world are seeing. There's still time to join us if you're quick. You don't have to be an expert to take part, and you can bird from your back garden if you wish. To join us, visit bit.ly/Global Big Day Team for full instructions. May the 8th is World Migratory Bird Day. Migration is a really challenging time for birds that are moving to their breeding grounds, and they face being trapped and killed by humans along the migration routes. Along with their efforts for recording the birds for the Global Big Day, we're raising funds for BirdLife International to help tackle the illegal killing of these birds. If you'd like to donate to our fundraiser, please visit bit.ly/CBPodDonate, and you can find all of this information in the episode notes. Episode 100 is really close now, and this is the last chance for you to have an opportunity to be featured in the episode. I'd love you to tell me about your joyful moments when birding, whether of the birds you've seen or how birdwatching makes you feel. Visit bit.ly/casualbirder100 to leave a message, and all of these links are in the episode notes. Personal recommendation is a powerful way to help others find the show. If you enjoy what you hear, please tell a friend or give the show a shout out on social media. You can also help support the show's production by contributing to the tip jar. And the easiest way to do this is to buy me a virtual coffee. Find the link in the episode notes. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by The Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.